Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 82nd episode of the Oligarchy Disrupted podcast with your host, Bennett and of course, we have the lovely Ashley down with us as well.
Hey, guys.
Alrighty, so we have another amazing episode for you today. What are we going to talk about today, Ashley?
Oh, my goodness. All right, so we're going to talk about the criminalization or the victimization of criminals in our society.
And on top of that, we also have a video for you from an internalized racist herself, Candice Owens, for you guys to all watch and decipher. We're going to play a little clip for you guys. Not the whole thing. It's 18-minute clips. We don't want to do that to you guys. We don't want to make your ears bleed and shit. So what we're going to do is just play like a 4 or 5 minute clip of that. And let's go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
So let's go with the clip first, and then let's comment on the topic of like the criminality and how people look at it and stuff. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Okay. So let's start with Candice Owens, see what she has to say, and then we'll comment after.
Oh, Candice.
Hello, Facebook family. I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing very heavily on my heart and on my mind.
Oh, I forgot to mention, if you guys didn't notice already that in the title, like this video is how she does not support George Floyd. She's one of the very few within her community that does not support George Floyd and the movement that was raised by his death. So a lot of people use this video. Like this video has closing in on 7 million views as of June 4th of this year. So that's only a few days ago, and it's 7 million views. A lot of people are watching this and using this as an excuse, but we're going to show you why exactly. So go ahead.
Mind as well, and it was something that I wanted to say early on, but there were so many emotions and so much pressure for me to go with the popular opinion about who George Floyd was. And sometimes it can be difficult when there are just so many external pressures to say what you believe. And this was an instance where I felt like my silence would have been better in the beginning, but the more that I think about it, I realize that we are being sold a lot of lies, and at the detriment to the Black community, at the detriment to the white community, and at the detriment to America as a whole. So I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. I'm going to explain why, and I hope that some of you guys will understand where I'm coming from. I have spent a considerable amount of time reading a lot of Black authors that I think are some of the most brilliant Black Americans breathing. Walter Williams, Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell. And I recently came across something that was an idea that was planted into my head by Shelby Steele. And it has been something that I cannot forget. It is something that will stick with me for the rest of my life. And it is something that I hope for the Black Americans that are watching will stick with you for the rest of your life. Shelby Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities. Our culture is unique from other communities because we are the only community that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. Now, let me explain what that means. It means to say that not every Black American is a criminal, not every Black American is committing crimes, but we are unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. You would be hard pressed to find, a Jewish person who has spent 5 stints in prison, who commits a crime and dies while committing a crime, and that the Jewish people champion and demand justice for. You will be hard pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard pressed to find this even in Latino America. There is a person that is spent multiple times in prison. You are not going to see a bunch of Latinos coming out demanding justice for this person, even if, and I want to be very clear, what I'm saying is not any defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be, implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died. But I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer. For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is something that I find to be despicable, and it's something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I'm not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from Black liberals and Black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be Black, is you have to say this was wrong and that this, this person was amazing. I won't do that. George Floyd was not an amazing person. And as soon as this video hit the internet, I did just basic searches. Everyone jumped on it and was looking at the police officer, and everyone agrees that the police officer was wrong, and the police officer has been arrested. So that is not the reason I'm not discussing that, is because that is not something that has been misconstrued in the media. He has been turned into the devil that he is, and there is no reason for us to harp on that any longer, because white Americans are not uplifting Derek Chauvin as a victim or pretending that he's an amazing human being. But George Floyd is being uplifted as an amazing human being. For those of you who have not yet seen the clips and did not pursue or wait for more clips to come out, first and foremost, George Floyd at the time of his arrest was high on fentanyl, and he was high on methamphetamine. This came back in both of his autopsy reports. If you pursue the 911 transcript, you can see the person describing somebody who is out of their mind high, and which is what made the person fearful, because he tried to use a bill that I guess was a fake bill to purchase something, and then he was outside acting weird, and they, in their police call, said that this person was obviously disordered on drugs. When he is put into handcuffs and is put against the wall, a baggie of what looks to be like cocaine or it's a white baggie that he drops onto the floor that you can see in an image. If you look up the clip, the media is refusing to circulate it. You can find it on Twitter. If you use DuckDuckGo and look up George Floyd baggie, you can watch the clip yourself with your own eyes. He had drugs on him at the time of his arrest. Now, barring all of that, nobody thinks that he should have died during this arrest. But what I find despicable to be is that everyone is pretending that this man lived a heroic lifestyle when he didn't. And I want to talk about what his lifestyle was leading up to this moment, and why I refuse to accept the narrative that this person is harder or should be lifted up in the Black community, and that we should be buying T-shirts with his name on it. Okay,
so let's end it here. But a good gist of what she goes on to say, basically. And then we can just segment off this, because like the whole topic of this episode is how people look at criminality, right? And how people interpret that information of the criminality that, like, for example, like she used the information that he had like a little baggie of cocaine to make it look like he was a bad person, using his criminal history of fake money. She even claimed that just now that because he was high, he was fearful enough to use fake money. Like, what the fuck argument is that? She mentioned earlier that Black people champion criminals when other races don't. And the simple fact is that, like, they just aren't killed at the same type of rates that Black people are. Like, that's why this is happening. That's why Black Lives Matter is a real movement that has tons of traction with millions of people. That's why people are all over the world, not only in the United States.
Yeah.
Recognize this, and this is a global issue. But it's really bad here, if we didn't get that already. And the last thing I wanted to mention about like her thing, just in my short little spiel here right off the bat, is she uses, like I mentioned a little earlier, that the fact that him using drugs basically means that he's a bad person. In other words, that's why he deserved to die, and that's why he ended up the way he did. But we have to ask ourselves this fundamental question. Is the act of doing drugs a death sentence? And for most people have fucking, even like Jeb Bush has tried marijuana. Like, I'm sure all these fucking people in Congress have done coke and like LSD and all this shit. But there's a double standard when it's Black people or people of color doing it. That's why they're pulled over at higher rates. That's why they're killed at higher rates. That's why the people of color are filling the prisons, and it's not the white people that are.
Well,
so, I don't know. Yeah, that was my bunch of shit. Sorry, I kind of went off, but yeah, go ahead, Ashley, with your take on it.
You know, I have a lot of thoughts about this video. I think that the way that she presents her argument is just very, I don't know. She's just making, I don't think that anybody is championing a criminal behavior or making criminals fashionable. I don't think that George Floyd as a criminal is the base of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? What this is about is the fact, and really why this happened is because there was multiple Black murders in a week's time. That's why this happened, because there's so many of them, because there's so many names. That's why we're saying their names. That's why you have their names on t-shirts, because there's so many of them and people are forgetting them. And it's just like another Black life lost. And when she says that people aren't, Latinos and white people and, all these other communities, they aren't glorifying their criminal activity, or, people who have, spent these times in prison. Well, statistically, these other communities are not in prison as often. And even if they are, I think that her rhetoric is just so, I think that her choice of words was very interesting. And she was making it, I mentioned this to you earlier, she's making it seem like it's like women's suffrage. And this is the face of women's suffrage. Like, nobody is saying that George Floyd was an amazing person. She literally uses those words. And it's like, I don't think that people are really saying that. People are saying that this was an unarmed Black male that was murdered by police. And whether he has a rap sheet or not, it's the person, it's the human. Black lives matter. It's the Black life that matters. Like, putting the rest of her video is, because I've watched the video in its entirety. She really just goes on to talk about his rap sheet and that he has been in prison, in and out of prison, that he has different, ever since I think he was like in his early 20s. But, you asked that question about, is that a death sentence? Is doing drugs a death sentence? Is anything a death sentence? Really? And especially if, people want to argue, murderers, they should be locked up, whatever. This guy didn't even kill anybody. I mean, come on. And I also think that it's important to note, now I'm ranting, but she said about the fact that he was on drugs. Exactly. So why do they need to use that much force? They never should have used that much force. This is clear indication that our law enforcement does not have good training in mental health and drug prevention and drug treatment and how to handle somebody in an intoxicated person, which they are called for those types of situations often. So you would think that they would be trained in how to handle them better.
Yeah. And I think I'm really glad that you mentioned you hit on their training, because there just isn't a lot of it. There's just isn't a lot of it at all for police. I believe that they go through their academy and stuff within 6 months or something. I've heard less than that from some places, but I think 6 months is pretty standard. But these people are literally learning, they're gonna kill people in 6 months. I don't know. I feel like 6 months might be a little over, I think, actually, what it is. But yeah.
Well, and they do continued education. They have to go to they have to complete so many hours. And depending on the police department, like the Chicago Police Department, they've been under the consent decree or something like that. So they have to do even more. But they do have to do, continual education.
Well,
but it's clearly not.
Literally, what has that done for them? Obviously they haven't been paying attention.
It's clearly not helpful training.
The solution is to defund the police. And that doesn't mean defunding all of them, defunding their money completely, decimating them or abolishing the police as we know it. It means moving some of the money that went to the police originally, taking away some of their original responsibilities, like Ashley was just talking about, how they're not supposed to respond, how they respond too strongly to some situations. We're going to give those We should give those responsibilities to other people that are highly trained in those types of things, and restrict the types of calls that the police can respond to. Only the toughest, the strongest type of thing. That's what that means.
Or even just create new factions of the police department where there are literally just mental health workers. Instead of people who are carrying guns, there are people who are maybe still considered police, but they are just mental health workers, like just put that money into some other areas instead of giving them more weapons.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure
and specialized SWAT teams.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure across all the United States. I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet from earlier today by Robert Reich, which is that economist, world-renowned economist that was Secretary of Labor under President Clinton in the 90s. He commented on this earlier today, and he mentioned how I believe the funding across all the United States for the police is over $100 billion. Oh wait, actually I have it right here. He tweeted, and I quote, "Every day, American taxpayers spend $315 million on police." Yes, you read that correctly. So that's just daily, this is that's pretty comparative to almost wartime, what we spend at war with other countries and stuff. And this is our police, and even on top of that, Donald Trump wanted to bring in the actual military to calm down the protests and whatnot. So that dude was literally on the brink of declaring war on his own people. Literally. So it's really interesting. Very interesting times we're living in. You were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, getting back to the criminalizing or victimizing criminals, I think that with Rayshard Brooks in particular, a lot of people came out about his video, and the fact that when the police were first called, it was an intoxicated person where he fell asleep in the drive-thru, and people people just straight up said, "Oh, well, he was drunk, blah, blah, blah." He, kind of justifying the situation. And I just can't help but put into perspective the fact, or, bring it back into my own life. I have known people who've had DUIs. Do I think that they would have gotten shot at? No. And also comparing this situation to George Floyd. This Rayshard Brooks was also intoxicated. Why are you using lethal force against somebody who's intoxicated? They clearly cannot, handle himself. And if you've seen the videos, you clearly can see that he can't really handle himself. So that also kind of just drives the point home that they really do need more training. But really what we need is just to take that task away from them and give it to somebody else so that we can get people in there who are able to do things differently, not holding guns.
100%. I think that's way overdue. Now, when it comes to the issue of Rayshard Brooks, the fact that people like to hit him on the fact that he was drunk or that he couldn't pass his sobriety test or whatnot, they'll go on and on about that, about his criminality and all that stuff. But that just goes back and once again, and they'll use videos like the one we showed you in the very beginning with Candice Owens, with people like that, influencers like that, to make sense in their heads, in their own heads about the situation, what happened. They're going to look for validation from other people, other Black people like Candice Owens, that is more than willing to tell them, because she just wants to rise to fame and she just wants to rise using her conservative thinking or whatever. She's going to use it to get there. And like I said, she's at 7 million views. It's clearly working. People are using their videos and people like her videos because she's Black and they're racist and her narrative fits theirs. So if you get this shit, Send it right back. This is straight up racist. I don't believe a fucking word she says. Send me another person, or send something else.
Yeah, I really like the video because I think that it says exactly what a lot of people are saying about Black men who are getting killed by police. Their first reaction is, well, what did they do? I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that. Well, what happened? What do you mean, what happened? You would not be asking that question if I said, did you hear about this white dude that got shot by police over here on Cermak and Hoyne? They'd be like, what? It would not be what happened. What did he do? But because it's a Black person, that's just the first question that you hear. And people want to say, oh, well, if I was in that situation, I would just get out of the car. I would just blah, blah, blah. Well, it's really easy for you to say when you're not intoxicated or when you're not just fed up because you're stopped all the time strictly based off your color.
Go ahead.
I like her video because I think that, and I clearly, because a lot of white people are sharing it and saying, oh, look at this girl, look at her, she's saying blah, blah, blah. But I like that she's saying it because I think so many people think the way that she thinks and aren't, and people aren't paying enough attention to that. And I like that she said it because I think people are paying attention to it now because she's a Black woman who's coming out against Black Lives Matter. And I think this needs to be talked about. People need to talk about the fact of, hey, why are we saying it's okay that they're dying, that they're getting murdered because they're criminals? Why? Why are we saying that that's okay?
Mm-hmm. One of the worst things that I feel like is coming out about also with this is like we're starting to see people's true colors, Mm-hmm. We're seeing that in government, people that are elected officials and whatnot. And we're also seeing it in our personal lives, which a lot of you are also noticing. And something that I think is really bad that I've noticed is kind of a trend, even in cases of my own family, like Candice Owens, people in my own family watch this. And if you don't already know, I'm Latino, right? I'm Mexican. So people of color are using these videos too to brainwash themselves because a lot of people don't talk about this. But Latinos, and I know I can say this because I am Mexican and I know many Mexicans and I know many Latinos. We are racist. Mexicans are racist from their origins. Traditional race, they're just racist. Even against other Mexicans that are the same color as them, they're just a little darker. Literally. So it's very sad to see our own people sell out.
Yeah.
And even more so if you're Black, because this movement is not for any one person. This isn't for a martyr or a hero like George Floyd or Rayshard Brooks or anything like that. Everyone is coming out, even white people, people of color, everyone is coming out because we all understand that this is not about ourselves or any one person. This is a movement about everybody, Mm-hmm. This is a movement about how this is just nothing is working. We've tried everything up until now and just nothing is working. That's why we're rioting. That's why we're out in the streets every day. Rioting is the language of the unheard, and they haven't heard us, which is why we're out there. But I just wanted to mention that I think it's really funny that people of color are also selling out and using videos like this to validate that. When their plight, I've been saying to many people of color, including many Mexicans and people in my family, or of course, I consider the BLM movement and this time period as our movement as well. Why? Because we are also shitting all the time. We also have our stereotypes. White people also say that we should only we're only good for cutting no lawns. We don't know anything else. We don't know how to speak English. We should go back to our country. We're just taking their jobs. We're a drain on their economy. We're also getting put in jail. We're also getting killed. We're also getting pulled over at higher rates. Mm-hmm. We're right there with you, so for any one person especially within my own or Latinos or whatever, our struggle is one and the same, Like that's something that we all have to understand, and not everybody does, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really big thing, especially living here in Pilsen, which is a predominantly Hispanic area. And surrounding areas a lot are either predominantly Black or predominantly Hispanic. And there's just been a lot of tension between the two. And it's scary at times, to be honest. But then it's also just disheartening because just like what you said, a lot of these things are things that both should be fighting for,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that right now what we need is just a collective response instead of a divided one.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the only time that when things actually change, right? Is when everybody comes out. It's when the white people come out, like the college educated white people, old, everybody, all stripes of colors from every walk of life. That's when real change happens. That's why we're seeing the amount of change we've seen in the last week, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Policies changing everywhere, police departments literally getting completely defunded,
dismantled. Yeah.
We're seeing real change. But why? Because we actually went out there and made our voices heard.
Demanded it. Mm-hmm.
We demanded it, in other words. Yes, you're 100% right. So that's what's really necessary. And we should not give up our fight until no justice, no peace, right? Until our demands are met, until real changes happen.
Yeah.
I think that should be when maybe people should step it back a little bit. But I think we're a long ways away from that, because all they've given us right now are let's tear down these monuments. Let me change the Aunt Jemima logo of the picture. Amazon put Black Lives Matter on their fucking website. That's all bullshit. That's all bullshit. I don't know how I explain it to you. But
it's like a good marketing tactic.
Literally, it's good PR. It's good PR. This is just money to these people. That's what all these donations are too. To the BLM movement or whatever. All these rich ass people. It might seem good at face value that they're giving money to a good cause that supports the movement, right? But that's a fucking tax. That's a tax write-off for them. That's why they do. I don't want to say that's why they're doing it. Not 100% because I can't say that for every blanket statement, but I can say that is a tax write-off, and that qualifies for one. And if their tax accountants have any brain cells left in their head, they're going to use
something like
that, which I think they're rich for a reason, and they are going to use things like that. So I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to put it like that. But I think it's a great place to wrap up, unless you have any other comments to make.
No, not really about that. I did just want to say, for all you Chicagoans that are listening, there are 3 marches planned for tomorrow. They're all taking place between 11 and 7 p.m. I think they all start at different times, but they're all collectively in downtown Chicago. So look them up. Try to go.
And even if you're not in Chicago, wherever you are, make sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
Already, make your voice heard. People are organizing. People are out there. Even in our small town, I'm not in the city like Ashley is. Even out here in the suburbs of Chicago, there are people still out there on the sidewalks, and there's pretty much not a ton here in the suburbs. I don't know, traffic or whatnot. So they're doing it because they feel so drawn to it, and they feel like a duty,
a passion for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really awesome. A part that's coming out of this movement as well. But like I said, I think it's a great place to wrap up here. So once again, thank you all so much for tuning in. And if you haven't done so already, definitely follow us on our social media pages. What do you have our social media, Ashley?
Oh my gosh, everything. Okay, so if I don't name it, I bet you we're still on it. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
And our website, I think.
Our website, of course, we're on WordPress, the Oligarchy Disruptor podcast.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all of the podcast apps. So Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's about 8.
We're on it all.
Yeah, 8 for the listening platforms. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, definitely do leave us a 5-star review. It'd be much appreciated on that end. But thank you all again so much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.